The first time I saw Captain Marcus Hale, he was standing in front of a burning mock structure with smoke curling behind him like it was part of his body. His stance was wide, solid, unshakable. The morning light caught on his helmet, turning it into something like a crown, and when he barked an order, even the air seemed to obey. I was just one of the volunteers standing in the background, my gear a little too new, my helmet slightly crooked. The others, career firefighters, paramedics, seasoned volunteers, moved with a rhythm I hadn't learned yet. I felt like an intruder in someone else's language. It was a community training drill, my first one since signing up a week ago. I'd joined the station because I didn't know what else to do with myself. My old job had dissolved without warning, and I was left with too much time, too much silence, and a feeling that I'd stopped mattering somewhere along the way. Volunteering had seemed noble, maybe even healing. What I hadn't expected was that the man leading the team would shake me to my core. Marcus was older, 40, maybe a bit more, but built like time had only carved him stronger. His face was all sharp edges softened by wear, the lines around his mouth, the faint streaks of gray at his temples. He spoke with that calm authority that didn't ask for attention, it claimed it. "Rogers, you're on hose duty with me," he said, eyes sweeping over the line of volunteers before landing on me. For a second, I thought he'd made a mistake. Then he gestured with a gloved hand. "You look like you can handle pressure." I almost laughed, if only he knew how wrong he was. But instead I nodded, my stomach twisting as I stepped forward. He handed me the hose, and the weight surprised me. The water roared through like a living thing, fighting my grip. I tried to hold steady, muscles trembling, but the stream swayed off course. Marcus was beside me in an instant. His hand closed over mine, firm and hot even through the gloves. "No," he said, voice low but steady. "You're fighting it. Don't fight it. Guide it." He moved behind me, one arm bracing mine, the other adjusting my stance until my feet were wider apart. His breath ghosted past my ear as he spoke, his tone somewhere between command and calm. The world narrowed to the sound of the hose and the thud of my heartbeat. "Feel that?" he asked quietly. "That's control. You've got it." When the drill ended, the others laughed and clapped shoulders, shaking off the tension like it was nothing. Marcus gave out a few orders, then turned to me again. "You did all right," he said. "Rookie nerves are normal. Don't let them own you." I wanted to thank him, to sound casual, but my voice caught. "Yes, sir." He gave me a look then, steady, unreadable. Something flickered behind his eyes. Not softness exactly, but a kind of restraint, like he was holding something heavy back. Then he nodded once and walked away, leaving me standing there in the sunlight with my pulse still trying to catch up. The rest of the day passed in a blur of noise and laughter. The crew was loud, teasing, full of stories that started with, "Back in my day." I smiled and tried to fit in, but my attention kept drifting to the captain. The way the others looked up to him wasn't just respect, it was trust. The kind you earn through fire and loss. At one point I caught him leaning against the engine bay doorway, arms crossed, watching the team. He looked almost human then, tired maybe, but there was something else too. Loneliness, or maybe the shadow of it. Our eyes met for half a heartbeat before he looked away, his jaw tightening. Later, when we cleaned up the equipment, I found myself beside him again. He showed me how to roll the hoses properly, his tone professional but quieter now. Our fingers brushed once when he passed me a coupling, and it was ridiculous how fast my mind went blank. "Careful," he murmured, a ghost of a smile tugging at the corner of his mouth. "These things bite if you're careless." I smiled back, unsure what to say, and he moved on, that same calm authority wrapping around him like armor. By the key. Time the sun set, I was exhausted, my shoulders sore, but there was a strange lightness in me too, purpose maybe, or curiosity. When I lay in bed that night, I replayed the day over and over, the weight of his hand guiding mine, the way his voice had settled deep inside my chest, steady and sure. I told myself it was just admiration, respect, for someone who knew exactly who he was and what he stood for, but admiration didn't make your skin remember touch. I stared at the ceiling long past midnight, the smell of smoke still clinging to my hair, my heartbeat echoing the rhythm of his voice. I couldn't sleep. I wasn't sure if it was the adrenaline, or the way his voice had stayed in my chest like heat. The second week at the station was worse than the first. By then, the novelty had worn off, and all that was left was the weight of expectation. The others moved with that easy precision that comes from years of working together. They didn't even have to speak sometimes. A nod or gesture was enough. I, on the other hand, was still trying to remember which hose coupling went where, and which radio code meant don't panic, and Captain Hale noticed. If someone else made a mistake, he'd correct them with a sharp nod or a quiet reminder. When I messed up, it was always louder. "Rogers!" He'd shout across the bay, voice echoing off the metal walls. "You check your equipment before you touch it, understood?" Every time he raised his voice, it burned a little. I told myself it was just tough training. He was the kind of leader who demanded perfection because lives depended on it. But there were moments when his eyes met mine afterward, and something flickered there. Regret, maybe, or something else he didn't want me to see. Still, it didn't make the sting any softer. I tried to blend in with the rest of the crew, tried to laugh when they laughed, but I was slower, less sure. During drills, my timing was off. When we did stair climbs, I lagged behind. Once, I dropped a hydrant wrench in front of everyone. The clang echoed like a gunshot. "Focus, Rogers," the captain said sharply, walking past without looking at me. But I saw the small shake of his head, and it hit harder than any insult. Later, when I sat outside trying to catch my breath, one of the older guys, Rick, clapped me on the shoulder. "Don't take it personal, kid. The cap's just intense," he grinned. "Besides, he only yells like that when he gives a damn." I laughed weakly. "Yeah, well, I wish he'd give a little less of a damn," Rick smirked. "Maybe you remind him of someone." That thought stayed with me long after he walked away. The locker room was the one place where the air felt different. Softer somehow. The metallic scent of the station mixed with soap and steam, and the noise dropped to murmurs and laughter. One evening after a long shift, I was sitting on the bench toweling off when the captain walked in. The chatter died almost instantly. He didn't seem to notice the sudden quiet. He never did. He moved with that same quiet authority, peeling off his jacket, the muscles in his arms shifting under his undershirt. I tried not to stare, but my eyes betrayed me. The lines of his shoulders, the small scar that ran across his forearm. He caught me looking. For a heartbeat, neither of us looked away. Then he tossed a towel toward me, a clean one, and said, "You missed your equipment check today. You planning to make that a habit?" I caught the towel awkwardly, fumbling with it. "No, sir. Just lost track of time." He raised a brow. "Then find it. Out there, seconds cost lives." "Yes, Captain." He paused then, the corner of his mouth twitching like he wanted to say more but thought better of it. "Good," he said simply and turned away. But as he passed, his hand brushed my shoulders, a fleeting touch, firm but not harsh. Enough to send a strange electricity down my spine. After he left, one of the other guys, Mason, nudged me. "Man, the captain really has it out for you," he said with a grin. "Or maybe you're his favorite." "Hard to tell." "Yeah, sure," I said, forcing a laugh. His favorite target, but Mason only smirked. "You'd be surprised." The days that followed were a pattern of discipline and quiet confusion. Captain Hale was harder on me than anyone else, yet he never ignored me. When others slacked off, he'd call me out to stay late and redo a drill. When I looked close enough, I realized he wasn't trying to humiliate me. He was testing me, pushing me. Once, after hours of repetition, my hands shaking from exhaustion, I muttered, "You really don't go easy on anyone, do you?" He stood there, arms folded, his expression unreadable. "Would you want me to?" I met his gaze, breath ragged. "Sometimes I think you just don't like me." He was silent for a long moment, then stepped closer, voice low. "If I didn't like you, Rogers, I wouldn't waste my time." I didn't know how to respond. He turned and walked off before I could find words, leaving me standing there with something new twisting in my chest. Not anger, not fear, but something deeper. By the end of the week, the teasing from the crew had grown bolder. "Hey, Rogers," Rick said one night, grinning, "if you're going to be the captain's pet project, at least get some perks out of it." "Yeah," Mason added. "He's got a soft spot for you. You must have done something right." I brushed it off with a smile, but part of me wondered if they were right. The captain was always nearby, watching, assessing, but never explaining why. That Saturday night, most of the crew had gone home or out drinking. I couldn't sleep, so I wandered into the station's small gym. The lights were dim, machines humming softly. I started lifting, trying to burn off the tension that had built up inside me. Halfway through my set, I heard the door open. Marcus Hale walked in wearing a plain black t-shirt and sweatpants, towel slung around his neck. He looked different out of uniform, less distant, more human. He nodded once. Couldn't sleep either? I shook my head. Something like that. He stepped to the treadmill, started jogging, his reflection moving beside mine in the mirror. For a few minutes, the only sound was the hum of the machines and our breathing. Then he slowed, leaning forward slightly, resting his hands on the rail. His eyes met mine in the mirror, steady, unguarded. For once, there was no command in his expression, no authority, just something wordless, something that felt dangerously close to recognition. Neither of us spoke. The silence stretched between us, charged, heavy. After a moment, he gave a small nod, almost imperceptible, and turned away. When he left, I stayed there, staring at my reflection, trying to understand the look I'd just seen in his eyes. It wasn't pity. It wasn't annoyance. It was something that felt like fire. Quiet, controlled, but waiting for air. It happened on a Tuesday, one of those days that started ordinary, slow, and almost too quiet. The crew was in the middle of a maintenance drill when the alarm cut through the air, shrill and urgent. Every conversation stopped mid-word. In seconds, helmets snapped on, gear tightened, and the firehouse filled with motion. "Residential fire," someone shouted. 2 blocks east, possible victims inside. Marcus's voice came over the radio, calm and commanding as always. "Engine 4, suit up. Rogers, you're with me." My pulse spiked, but I didn't hesitate. The routine we'd drilled over and over finally made sense. Every buckle, every strap locked into place with purpose. The siren wailed as we tore down the street, lights flashing against wet pavement. Marcus sat up front, radio in hand, jaw set. From behind his mask, his eyes were all focus, no fear. When we arrived, the house was already half-eaten by flames. Smoke rolled thick and black from the windows, the sound of crackling wood like distant thunder. People stood outside screaming names. Marcus didn't waste a second. 2 teams, he ordered. We sweep the east side. Rogers, stay on me. The heat was instant, suffocating, consuming. My mask fogged as we pushed through the door, visibility dropping to nothing. I could hear the groan of collapsing wood above, the hiss of our hoses cutting through the dark. We moved low, sweeping each room. My heart hammered so hard I could feel it in my fingertips. Then I heard it, a faint sound, soft but unmistakable. A child crying. "Captain!" I shouted, turning toward the noise. Marcus followed without hesitation. We found her crouched behind a couch, maybe 6 years old, clutching a stuffed bear blackened by soot. Marcus lifted her, covering her face with his glove. "Got her," he said into the radio. Bringing her out. The path back was chaos. Smoke thickened, fire clawing up the walls. The beam above us gave a loud, sickening creak. "Go," Marcus barked. I pushed forward, the child pressed to my chest, my lungs burning even through the mask. We were almost at the door when the ceiling gave out. A burst of sparks rained down and Marcus shoved me forward, taking the brunt of the debris. We stumbled out onto the street, gasping as fresh air hit. The girl was whisked away by paramedics, coughing but alive. When I turned, Marcus was on one knee, clutching his shoulder, his jacket torn. "Captain," I started, but he waved me off. "I'm fine." He tried to stand, winced. Okay, maybe not fine. I was beside him in an instant, sliding under his arm to help him up. For once, he didn't argue. He leaned into me, heavy and human, his weight a mix of exhaustion and stubborn pride. Back at the truck, I helped him sit, hands trembling as I unbuckled his gear. His skin beneath the collar was slick with sweat, streaked with soot. He looked up at me then, eyes softer than I'd ever seen them. "Good work in there," he said quietly. "You kept your head. Not everyone does their first time." I swallowed hard, trying to steady my breath. "You saved us both." He shook his head, a faint smile ghosting across his face. "No, you did." For a while, neither of us spoke. The noise around us faded, and sirens, voices, everything became distant. We sat there on the curb, side by side, both breathing the same smoky air, the same adrenaline. After a moment, he spoke again, voice lower now. You want to know why I'm hard on you? I looked over. Yeah, kind of been wondering that. He stared ahead, elbows resting on his knees. 2 years ago, I lost a man, rookie, about your age. Bright, eager, thought he could handle more than he could. I let him go in too soon. He paused, voice catching slightly. We got him out, but not in time. The words hung there between us, heavy and raw. I promised myself I wouldn't let it happen again, he said. So yeah, maybe I ride you harder than I should. But I'd rather have you angry at me than gone. I didn't know what to say. The air between us felt fragile, full of unspoken things. I wanted to reach out to tell him it wasn't his fault, but the words felt too small. Instead, I just nodded. I get it. I do. He turned to me then, and something unguarded passed over his face. Grief, maybe, or gratitude. Our hands brushed where they rested on the curb, his glove warm against my wrist. Neither of us pulled away. For a long moment, we sat there like that. The night cooling around us, the chaos dying down to silence. The flames had been put out, but the air still shimmered with heat, and I couldn't tell if it came from the fire or from something neither of us wanted to name. When the last of the equipment was loaded, Marcus stood with a quiet groan. Clean up back at the station, he said, his voice back to its usual steady calm. But then he looked at me, his tone softening again. Come to my office after. I blinked. After the cleanup? He nodded once. Yeah, there's something I want to talk about. He turned before I could ask what. As I watched him walk away, the smoke swirling faintly around the lights, I couldn't tell if I was about to be praised or if I was stepping into something I wasn't ready for. By the time the station quieted down that night, the air smelled like a strange mix of soap, smoke, and exhaustion. The rest of the crew had gone home or turned in early, but I couldn't stop thinking about what Marcus had said before. Come to my office after. I stood outside his door for a long moment, gear cleaned and stored, uniform shirt clinging faintly to my skin. The narrow hallway hummed with the low buzz of the vending machine, the faint hiss of the shower in the distance. I raised my hand, hesitated, then knocked. Yeah, came his voice, steady but quieter than usual. When I stepped inside, the first thing I noticed was the lighting. Only a small lamp on the desk was on, throwing a golden pool of light across papers, a mug of coffee, and Marcus himself. He sat with his jacket off, sleeves rolled to his elbows, a faint bruise darkening the side of his neck from the debris earlier. He looked tired, but not weak. Never weak, close the door, he said. I did. The click sounded louder than it should have. For a few seconds, neither of us spoke. The air between us was thick, charged with something that wasn't entirely about the fire. Finally, he leaned back in his chair, eyes steady on me. You know what your problem is, Rogers? I tried to force a laugh, but it came out dry. Just one? He didn't smile. You've been distracting me. That pulled the air right out of me. Distracting you? He nodded slowly, his gaze unflinching. Every time I look at you, I lose focus. Out there, I can't afford that. I can't afford you. I opened my mouth, closed it again. I don't know what you want me to say to that. Say the truth, he said quietly. You feel it too. Something inside me snapped then. Not anger, but confusion that had been building for weeks. I stepped forward, my voice sharper than I meant it to be. Feel what? You push me harder than anyone else, you look at me like I've done something wrong, and then you say that? I shook my head. I don't know what you want from me, Captain. He stood, his chair scraping back. I don't know either. For a long moment, he just looked at me. The tension that had always hovered between us finally stopped pretending to be something else. I've been doing this job for over 20 years, he said, his voice rough around the edges now. I've seen every kind of fire, every kind of loss. But you, he stopped, exhaling through his nose. You're different. You remind me what it's like to feel something other than duty, and I've been trying to fight that since the day you walked in. My heart was hammering. You think I don't feel it too? He froze, eyes flicking up to mine. I stepped closer until the desk was the only thing separating us. This whole time, I said, I thought I was just imagining it. That maybe I was reading too much into the way you talk to me or the way you... I faltered. The way you look at me sometimes. His jaw tightened. You weren't imagining it. For a moment, neither of us moved. The only sound was the faint creak of the air vent, the quiet drip of rain outside. Then Marcus came around the desk, slow, deliberate. I could see the conflict written all over him. Duty on one side, something far more dangerous on the other. He stopped a few feet away, close enough that I could smell the faint trace of smoke still clinging to his shirt. His voice was low when he spoke again. "You're younger. You're under my command. It's wrong and I know it. But when I saw you in that fire today," he swallowed hard, "I realized I couldn't keep pretending this isn't there. I didn't trust my voice enough to speak." I just nodded, my breath coming shallow. He hesitated for a second longer, then reached up, slowly, like he was giving me time to pull away, and brushed his fingers against my jaw. His touch was tentative, almost reverent. "This is a mistake," he murmured. "Then why does it feel like the first thing that's right?" I whispered. He gave a quiet, strangled laugh, half disbelief, half surrender. And then he closed the distance between us. It wasn't a rough or desperate kiss. It was hesitant, trembling, full of everything neither of us had allowed ourselves to say. His hand found the back of my neck, mine pressed against his chest, feeling his heartbeat pounding as fast as mine. For a moment, time stilled. The station, the rules, the world outside, it all vanished. Then he broke the kiss, pulling back just enough to rest his forehead against mine. His breath was unsteady, his eyes searching mine like he was trying to find an answer that didn't exist. "This can't happen," he said quietly. "I know," I whispered. "But it just did." He laughed softly, the sound almost broken. Then he stepped back, the distance between us returning like a wall. "I shouldn't have done that," he said, voice low. "You should go home. Marcus, go," he said again, softer this time. "Please." I wanted to argue, to stay, to ask what would happen now. But something in his face told me he was already fighting himself harder than he ever fought any flame. I nodded, turned toward the door. My hand was on the knob when he spoke again. "Rogers." I looked back. His eyes were shadowed, full of something fierce and unspoken. "This doesn't change what I expect from you out there," he said. "You keep doing your job. You keep proving you belong here." I nodded again, my throat too tight to answer. When I finally stepped out into the hallway, the air felt cooler, the silence heavier. I didn't know what the kiss meant or what it would cost us. But as I walked away, I knew one thing for sure. Something had started burning between us that neither of us could put out. The days that followed our moment in the captain's office felt colder than the ashes we left behind after every fire. Whatever had flickered between us that night, that silent, dangerous spark, had been smothered under a blanket of duty and distance. Marcus became colder, sharper. Every instruction he gave me sounded clipped, every glance brief and unreadable. He didn't meet my eyes anymore, not even during roll call. If I laughed at something the others said, he'd cut it short with a glare. It was like I'd broken some rule I didn't know existed. The others noticed too. Guess the captain got tired of his favorite rookie, one of the guys. Donnie teased one morning as we cleaned the hoses. "Shut up," I muttered, but I could feel their eyes burning into me. I wasn't angry at them, I was angry at myself. Because they were right. I had no idea where I stood anymore. I'd tried to stay focused on the drills, on the endless washing, polishing, folding, but the silence between Marcus and me echoed louder than the sirens. It gnawed at me. One evening after a long day, I caught him in the hallway near the gear room. Just the two of us. For a second, I thought he'd walk past me like always, but he stopped, shoulders tense, jaw clenched. "Captain," I said quietly. His head turned, but he didn't meet my eyes. "You should go home, kid. It's been a long day." I took a breath, my voice low. Did I do something wrong? He hesitated, then shook his head. "No, you did everything right." Then he left. Just like that. And that was worse than yelling, worse than anything. The next few weeks passed in slow, gray repetition. I showed up, I worked. I pretended I didn't care. But every time the alarm went off and I saw him leading the team, something in me pulled tighter. I didn't just want his approval anymore. I wanted him. And that was exactly why I couldn't stay. That Friday, I sat in the locker room long after everyone had gone home, staring at the volunteer forms. My name looked strange written there, temporary, like I never really belonged. Maybe quitting was the right thing. Maybe that would make it easier for him too. I folded the papers and tucked them into my bag, my heart heavy. I told myself I'd give them to him tomorrow, but tomorrow didn't go the way I planned. We were dispatched to a small apartment fire. Contained, the dispatcher said. Nothing major, but fire doesn't always follow orders. When we arrived, the smoke was already thick and bitter. The tenants were out, except for one man who thought he could save his things. We could hear him coughing from inside. Marcus barked orders and everyone snapped into motion. I followed, adrenaline pushing my fear away. We went in, just Marcus and me like always. The heat hit hard, even through the mask. We moved fast, voices muffled behind the respirators. I caught sight of the trapped man in the corner and moved toward him, crouched low. The next moment there was a cracking sound, wood giving way. Something above us shifted, and before I could react, the ceiling groaned. "Get out," Marcus shouted. I barely turned when the beam came down. It hit the floor near me hard, sending sparks and flame up around my legs. My oxygen tank clanged against the wall. Pain seared across my arm, and I hit the ground. Smoke, heat, chaos. "Marcus!" I yelled, but the fire roared back louder. Then our hands. Strong hands. He was there, pulling me by the harness, dragging me through the haze. I felt his body shield mine as something exploded behind us. We stumbled into the hallway, coughing, choking, both half-blind. Outside, the cold air hit like a slap. He yanked off my mask, his face streaked with ash and fury. "What the hell were you thinking?" he yelled. I was trying to get the guy. He was already out." Marcus's voice cracked. His hand gripped my jacket, shaking. "You could have been—" He stopped. The words died. His hand was still on me, trembling. His eyes, those same eyes that had once been stone, now burned with something raw and terrified. "You could have died," he said, voice low now. "Don't you get that?" "I can't—" He broke off again, running a hand through his hair, pacing like he couldn't contain it. "I can't lose you." For a moment, everything around us disappeared, the sirens, the shouting, the flashing lights. It was just him standing there, shaking, his chest rising and falling fast. I stepped closer, ignoring the ache in my arm. "Then stop pushing me away," I said quietly. His eyes finally met mine. The anger in them melted into something else. Something I had seen flicker there weeks ago, but never this bare. This real. He didn't say anything. He just looked at me like he was seeing me for the first time again. And in that silence, and amid the smoke and the chaos, I knew something had changed. Something neither of us could undo. It had been 6 weeks since that night. The fire, the shouting, the moment everything finally came out. 6 weeks since I'd seen Marcus not as my captain, but as a man stripped of command, fear, and walls. The station had changed. So had I. Marcus had stepped down from his captain's role a few days after that fire. Officially, it was for training new recruits, but everyone knew it was more than that. He said he needed a break, to slow down, to teach instead of command. The crew respected him for it, and for once so did I. As for me, I stayed. The thought of quitting felt ridiculous now. I'd been tested in ways I never imagined, through heat, smoke, loss, and emotion. Somewhere along the way, I'd stopped being the rookie. I'd become part of the team. Sometimes late at night, I caught myself thinking about him, about the way he'd said, "I can't lose you," about the fear in his voice, the honesty in his eyes. We hadn't spoken much since. He'd left a note before stepping down, a simple one, handwritten, tucked inside my locker. "You did more than survive that day. You became who you were meant to be. I'm proud of you." No signature, no address, just that. But I didn't need his name to know who it was from. The new recruits arrived in early spring. I'd been assigned to help train them on safety drills and emergency response, the kind of thing Marcus used to handle alone. When I walked into the training ground that morning, I saw him there, clipboard in hand, sun in his hair, sleeves rolled up, looking every bit the same. And yet softer somehow. He turned as if he'd felt me before seeing me. Our eyes met, and for the first time in weeks, "I didn't feel nervous, didn't think you'd still be here," he said, a small smile playing at his lips. "Didn't think you would," I shot back. The recruits ran drills under our watch. Between commands and corrections, our glances crossed like sparks in the open air. It wasn't heavy like before. No tension, no unspoken weight. Just quiet understanding. At one point, while the trainees practiced hose maneuvers, he came to stand beside me, close enough that I could smell the faint smoke on his shirt, that familiar scent that had once followed me into sleepless nights. "You've come a long way," he said softly. I shrugged, but I was smiling. "Had a good teacher," he chuckled. "Stubborn student. Guess we evened each other out." The silence that followed wasn't awkward. It was easy, warm, like embers glowing after the fire's gone down. When the drills ended and the others packed up, he gestured toward the back lot. "Walk with me?" We crossed behind the training grounds where the old fire tower stood, now bathed in gold by the setting sun. The air was cool, but the light was soft, wrapping everything in warmth. For a moment I wondered if this was how healing looked. Not loud or dramatic, but steady, glowing, alive. He spoke first. "I thought distance would help me forget," he said quietly. "Turns out it just reminded me of what mattered." I looked at him, really looked. The lines around his eyes, the roughness in his voice, the gentleness he tried to hide. "You didn't do anything wrong, Marcus," I said. "We just met at the wrong time." He nodded, his eyes on the horizon. "And maybe now the timing's right." The words hung there between us, honest and unhurried. I felt the old pull, not the reckless kind, but something steadier, like gravity finding its place. When he reached out, his hand brushed mine, tentative at first. Then, when I didn't pull away, his fingers settled between mine, sure and warm. We stood there for a while, the sun dipping behind the fire tower, the sky painted in copper and rose. No sirens, no uniforms, no rules. Just two people who'd walked through flame and come out changed. He turned to me, voice low. "You know, I used to think fire only destroyed. And now?" I asked. He smiled faintly, eyes soft. "Now I think it just shows what can survive." I didn't need to say anything. The look we shared said enough. That what we'd gone through hadn't broken us, just burned away everything false. As we walked back toward the station, side by side, I realized the fear, the confusion, the doubt. All of it had turned to something else. Something solid, something real. In the end, the fire didn't consume us, it remade us. And for the first time in a long time, I knew I was exactly where I was meant to be.